it's nuts. Like there's no reason for her to have that much energy. But
Oh, I got shit all over me too. I'm a little.
yeah, well, I'm trying to pick off whatever hair I got, but you know.
And it's like, you notice it now a little bit, but I'll tell you, when I'm like editing, I notice it 5,000 times more.
Oh, great,
Like,
fantastic. That's,
We both wear black and got hair all over it too.
yep.
You ready?
I'm good, man.
What's up, fellow fantasy-loving friends? Josh here with RSMP Tabletop, and I'm beyond excited because I am here with...
My name is Jared. Thanks so much for having me on, man.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
it.
on. Jared's
Great.
the one that does all the thumbnails for the channel, and I usually send him to him like the day before. I'm like, hey, I want to release this video in 12 hours. What can you do? And he gets it done for us, so...
Oh, yeah, and honestly, man, it's been a ton of fun too. Kind of like stretching like the creative legs.
Well, what's super cool is the reason you're on the channel right now for this video specifically is because you do the thumbnails for the video. You didn't play Marvel Crisis Protocol.
No, until about like an hour and a half ago. So
I got a text from him that said he had texted me some of the Marvel Crisis stuff sitting on a seat, and he said, like, you convinced me or something like that, right?
yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm finally like brought over to like the dark side or whatever. So last week I went down to the battle standard. I was like, you know, I think I'm finally gonna pull the trigger on this. I thought at first I would just buy like a couple characters to like paint up for fun, and then of course, you know, Eric over at the battle standard, if you're watching this, we were joking about it before, where it's like I fold like a wet paper napkin. I'll be like, oh yeah, no, I want to spend like 100, 150, 200 bucks, whatever it is, right, to get into a new game, and then I walk out of there spending almost double that every time. You know, but yeah. So last week I picked up the core set here, and I picked up a couple other characters, and you know, we just tried them out.
Nice. So you have a background in tabletop wargaming. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then lead into what actually got you to pull the trigger on Marvel Crisis Protocol?
Yeah, sure. So I've basically been familiar with Warhammer since I've been like 13. Back when I want to say it was like 5th edition, 40K. Me and a few friends, and of course, like we were 13-year-olds with like barely any like allowance money. So, you know, we would pick up like a box here and there. So we were playing like 150-point games of Warhammer, right? When, you know, 2000 has been the staple, right? So these are like really tiny like squad leader things. And I kind of fell out of it for a while, but then when COVID happened, some of my friends actually got into Necromunda. So I have a few Necromunda gangs, and then very quickly, I just kind of went down the whole like tabletop wargaming pipeline. So now, you know, I got Necromunda, I got Kill Team, I have 3 full 40K armies. That's just over the past like 4 or 5 years. So it's been really cool. And now that you have started playing Crisis Protocol, and I've, you know, obviously been watching the videos I've been doing the thumbnails for, I figured, oh, you know, like I'm a really big comic dork as well. So it always seemed kind of like a natural crossover, but none of my friends ever really showed too much interest in Crisis Protocol. And yeah, just eventually last week after putting together a couple of those thumbnails, I was like, I'm gonna go to the battle center and see what they got. And here we are.
So you brought up that you're a video game or a comic book nerd, kind of, in your own words. Was that the appeal that like finally brought you into this? Like, what made you finally just say, you know, was it just the fact that you had more people playing, or was it like?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely like the biggest factor was probably more people playing. But then on top of that, I looked at all the affiliations and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. You know, I could play my Marvel Knights, I could do the Midnight Suns, you know, Defenders and all that stuff. So I think once I saw a lot of like my personal favorite characters, I was like, okay, I'm sold, you know, and I was like, you know, it'd be cool to finally paint up Daredevil, you know,
awesome.
I've never had a chance to do it. So.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of cool. You had mentioned you have a YouTube channel as well.
Wonder Woman Dead Earth is an Elseworld story written and illustrated by Johnson once again. This time we see Wonder Woman in the apocalypse trying to lead a pilgrimage of survivors to Themyscira.
You do, and you focus a lot on graphic novels, comic books, things of this sort. So now that you got to kind of play this game and stuff, do you feel like the characters and the pieces like feel like they're graphic novels, or like talk to me about the connection that you've made between the graphic novels and the game?
Yeah, so and again, I've only played one game, so like my experience is like pretty limited, you know, with like how all the characters interact with each other. But even with, you know, I think we did what, 3 turns right now, 3 or 4 turns?
4, yeah.
4. And all these characters have so much character that it feels like they're coming off the page, you know? So like you threw Spider-Man back with Rogue, right? And then I had Spider-Man immediately like thwip his way back in to attack again, you know? And like Captain America can do like the shield bounces. And like, it's like, you could tell by the people who make these characters for the game, they clearly know what they're talking about. You know, like these are definitely like comic book fans that love these characters just as much as we do.
Nice. Now, you had brought up a couple interesting facts that you noted in regards to like artistry and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that? What'd you notice about the game here?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciated when I was first looking over all of the sheets, if you look at the tactic cards, they actually credit all of the artists on there as well. So the first one that kind of stuck out to me was, I think it might be the Avengers Assemble tactic card, if I'm remembering correctly. And on the very bottom, it says Dan Mora, who is, if you're familiar with comics, he does a lot of stuff for DC right now, but he's done a lot of stuff for Marvel as well. So it's really cool to see a game like this, where realistically, compared to like all these Marvel movies and everything, there's not a ton of people playing this compared to, you know, these multi-billion-dollar movies. But even then, like those movies, like they don't really credit the actual creators or the writers or anything like that. But it's so cool to see something like this in this game where, you know, right on the card, it's like, hey, you wanna know who did this art? Right here. So it's awesome to finally see some of these artists just getting credit for, you know, their creations. It's great.
Yeah, I had no idea that was the case, but you know me, I'm really about trying to build a community, let people know about the tabletop shops that are out there, and you know, really just bring to light like some of the amazing people that you can just walk into a game shop and roll some dice with and have some fun. So we talked a little bit about your experience kind of, you know, with the graphic novels into here, but like we got to play. So you do have some experience with Warhammer and some of those other games. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience, what you thought of the game, what you thought about some of the mechanics, just kind of your first impression?
Sure, yeah. I will say, just if I get like a one sentence review, it was great. It's super easy to pick up, and like just a solid pickup game, basically. You know, me and you were talking about how this is like a beer and pretzels game, like at its core. And this is, even though there is some of like that competitive edge that you can put onto it, I'm assuming once you get more into it, but there's so much that just makes this game easier to play than a lot of its other games that you can find, right? So, you know, you try to play Warhammer, right? You're spending half an hour setting up the table and reading the rules and going over your army list. Here, even though it was my first time and your fourth time playing, I think we had a game up and running in like 15 minutes. And that was as you were explaining the rules to me too. So it's super quick to go. And honestly, as far as the actual gameplay, it's super smooth. I feel like it's just a I go, you go. It has the alternating activations. So, you know, you're not really waiting for like long periods of time or anything like that between turns. It's you take your 2 actions, your opponent goes, and then you go right again, you know? And so like the downtime is maybe like 2 minutes, but even then you're just you're still throwing dice with them if you're like defending or trying to capture an objective or anything like that. So yeah, it's super fluid game, wicked easy to pick up. I would super recommend this to anybody who likes Marvel or tabletop gaming. So
yeah, no, I mean, so for me now, being an adult, new job, all this and that, like it's really hard to carve out some extra time for stuff like this, right? And for me, I think when we were just playing, actually, the second turn, I think I looked at you and said, like, you basically get it now, though,
yes.
right? Like, a game that you can literally learn by turn 2 on your first time, not learn entirely, but get the basics of and the core mechanics. I just think that's really special. I think that it just shows you that it's a great game design. You know, even we broke down the character cards a little bit, because when you first look at a character card, you read all the abilities and all the stuff it can do, and it can be overwhelming. You think that there's a lot there, but like when you really look at it and you realize like, okay, the top parts, like here's their attacks. One probably costs 0 and it's free, and then they get a little bit more powerful, and then you get to move down and you get to understand like the layout. I'm somebody who, to have the cards in front of me and all the stuff's there, that's awesome. I don't want to have to flip through 5 or 6 books and do all this or that, try to remember pages and stuff like that, because again, I don't have a lot of time to do this. You brought up 15-minute setup, we're throwing dice. By turn 2, we understand how to play the game. We talked about this a little bit earlier before we started filming, and I think one thing that deters people from getting into bigger war games is, you know, when you get on YouTube and you start looking at some of the channels and stuff out there, it at least appears to me like you watch these guys and it seems like everybody's been playing these games for 30 years, knows all the rules, all the weapons, and it's like, it's daunting. It's like, I'm not gonna be able to catch up to that. With this game, however, my third game, I played against a really good opponent named Eric, and I was competitive with him. Like, he beat me, he certainly did, but like, at no point was it a feel-bad moment, or did I not feel like I was in the game. You actually beat me today. You had a really big turn and it swung out, your first game, but you are a Warhammer, or not Warhammer player, but you do come from war gaming and you do understand concepts. And I think if you have played any other war game out there, I think jumping into this, you're not gonna feel like it's a downgrade, or at least I didn't. I'll let you speak on your experience on that in a second, but it just felt at home, everything made sense, and it was just enjoyable.
yeah, it definitely not a downgrade in the slightest. I think, you know, to Warhammer's credit, like it is very number crunchy. You know, if you want to roll 80 dice, you could do that in a single Warhammer turn, you know? But for Marvel Crisis Protocol, this is just, it's so easy to pick up, you know? I basically skimmed the core rules before I came here, and again, we were playing in 20 minutes. It's just really super easy to play, and even like looking at the character cards, right? Because obviously a lot of those were brand new to me. looking at those, and especially as a comic fan, there's a lot of stuff that I can get out of there. For example, like Doctor Strange had the Eye of Agamotto, right? Like that's his big thing, and I was using that ability all the time. And it's like, because I kind of also know what that does from like a story perspective, because I've read the books and everything and seen the movies, like I kind of already have an idea of what's going into that. And I get the feeling if we were to like throw some dice right now and do another game, like I wouldn't even have to like look at the card half the time. You know, and it's really cool, super easy to pick up, and it's just so thematic. I loved it. It was great.
Awesome. So you had mentioned, this is kind of, I think this is important anyway. I think this is an important fact. We had played our first game, and like you had just mentioned, you spent some money, you bought some stuff. The first thing you said when we stopped playing our first game, that you were going to go out and potentially buy more characters. Was it? Who are you considering already?
I'm thinking Blade and Moon Knight are going to be my next ones. I'm a really big fan of the more like street level Marvel. So like, you know, Spidey, Daredevil, Moon Knight, and obviously Spider-Man comes in the core set. Daredevil was one of the boxes I just picked up. And on top of that, I was also convinced to pre-order Shang-Chi and Silver Sable from the Battle Standard. So I'll be heading there next week, I believe, when it releases. So,
which we had a pretty good video that we dropped on Friday. It was a special release where Eric and Jin came on and talked a lot about those characters in depth. Did that have anything to do with your decision, watching that video for the thumbnail?
So believe it or not, I already pre-ordered it before I saw the video, but that cemented the fact that I was like, oh, these characters are cool. You know, I'm really pumped, you know. But yeah, so even though I already pre-ordered Shang-Chi and Silver Sable, I will say that watching like their breakdown of it really helped me understand the characters before I even have them on the table, right? And I will say that I'm very much looking forward to interacting with them in the future as well, because they're obviously super knowledgeable about how the game works and like on a more like meta level, like how like the characters interact with each other and everything. So I was super pumped to see that video, and it really just kind of convinced me. I was like, I made a good choice pre-ordering these. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you brought that fact up, because it's like, that's one thing I want to try to do on this channel. I want any new players that are thinking about, like, if you don't have wargaming experience, if you have wargaming experience, these games can be scary to get into, but they're not, because you don't have to play them at a high level. You don't have to play the rules right to the T if you're both agreeing and having a good time. Like, it doesn't take away the fun factor or the rolling the dice. And I just can't help but feel like this is such a good game to get people into the hobby. I think the painting and the building these has been just so much fun for me, because again, I grew up with these characters. So, you know, watching the original X-Men cartoon while I paint and stuff like that, like I love nostalgia, and it pulls me right into that. Do you enjoy the building and painting aspect of this as much as the playing, or where do you sit on the fence on that?
So I will say, generally speaking, and this goes to even like Warhammer and the other games that I play as well, I'm definitely more of like a painting guy. Like I will say, like if I was to break down my hours over the past 5 years or so, I've spent like probably 75% of my hobbying time just painting. Nice. You know, so I unfortunately haven't had time yet to really pick up my brush and start painting these characters. But I'm so excited, because I mean, again, as someone who's already like been invested in these characters between the comics and the movies and everything, no one's limiting you to just doing like the box art. You know what I mean? Like you can choose like, oh, I like this one costume that Captain America wore in this, and I'm gonna do the color scheme to reflect that. No one's gonna stop you from doing that too. So I'm really pumped to really just put the brush on these minis, and hopefully soon we could have a fully painted table. It'll be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Jared, it was so good having you on, man. The last thing I want to do is give you a second to just kind of plug your channel. Where can people find you, and what's some of the things that they can expect to see if they check your channel out?
Yeah, so my primary channel is The BS Crew. So if you just go to youtube.com/@TheBSCrew, you'll be able to find us there. I primarily make video essays about comic books. That could be some recent stuff, some throwbacks. I've recently done a couple deep dives into a couple specific authors, and I have a couple more of those coming up as well. And yeah, occasionally I also do a podcast with some friends. And we kind of cover anything nerdy, from comics, video games, movies, you name it. If it's in the pop culture kind of zeitgeist, we'll go over it. So yeah, if you want to check us out there, feel free. And hopefully I'll see you guys over on the channel.
Nice. And the link will also be in the description below. So click on it, check his channel out. And until next time, stay safe.
Have a good one.